Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Have You Played, where I show you some spoiler-free gameplay from a selection of older games and give you my thoughts on them. In this video I'm playing the Handsome Collection edition of Borderlands the prequel, the remastered version of the 2014 looter shooter that re-released as part of the Handsome Collection in 2015. Between this game, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, Borderlands 2, and Borderlands 3, the prequel is the only one in the series that I haven't played through multiple times. While it isn't my favorite in the franchise, it is still a Borderlands game, which means that even at its weakest, it's packed with chaotic fights and colorful characters. It might stumble in a few areas, but it still delivers a fun time overall, so let's just talk about it.
Hello, Vault Hunter, and thank you for answering Hyperion's summons!
Borderlands the prequel is technically a prequel to Borderlands 2, but it's framed as a flashback and actually takes place after the game's conclusion. It kicks off with Athena having been captured by Mordecai and Brick, and while being interrogated by Lilith, she tells a story about a low-level Hyperion programmer, a captured space station, and a vault on Pandora's moon.
That's a little more information than I needed.
The narrative as a whole isn't the strongest aspect of the game, but it's an interesting concept that lets fans go back in time to spend more time with fan-favorite characters, and getting more of Handsome Jack is never a bad thing.
Oh, this day gets better and better!
The flashback framing device is kind of hit or miss, but it generally works. For the most part, you'll forget it's even happening until one of the present-day characters like Lilith or Mr. Torg chime in with some commentary.
Stop complimenting the prisoner.
The writing is also a little bit weaker than the other games in the franchise, with this one leaning somewhat into 2014 meme culture. It's not terrible, but it can feel a little try-hard compared to the more natural comedic tone in the other games. On the other hand, this is also the first game in the franchise where your playable character actually has regular dialogue, and it can be really fun to hear the characters have actual conversations with other NPCs during story beats.
Yeah, totally, lady. I'm all over this.
As with all the games that came before it, Borderlands the prequel is a looter shooter with RPG elements, skill trees, and more weapons than you'd ever need. In the Handsome Collection edition of the game, you can play as one of 6 characters: Athena the Gladiator, Wilhelm the Enforcer, Nisha the Lawbringer, Claptrap the Frag Trap, Jack the Doppelganger, or Aurelia the Baroness.
That's appalling.
Each character plays really differently, but the fan favorites tend to be Claptrap, who can deal massive damage with the right build, and Nisha, whose gunslinger skills make her a beast in solo combat. Athena is also generally regarded as a well-balanced pick for most players, while I personally prefer Jack's Doppelganger and his holographic clones.
I need backup!
As with the other games, you also have some light customization options where you can swap around your head and color scheme, but it's nothing too involved. Unfortunately, this is also the game that introduced oxygen mechanics, and it's definitely my least favorite addition. Unless you're playing as Claptrap, who doesn't need to breathe, you'll constantly be having to manage your oxygen levels while fighting on the moon's surface, and it can make the majority of the game feel like one big underwater level. Because you're able to jump higher in low gravity, the maps tend to be a lot more vertical as well, which can unfortunately make navigation more confusing when you can't figure out if you need to be going higher, or if you even can. The reduced gravity does give you more mobility, as well as a boost that depletes your oxygen reserves, but for me, the negatives outweigh the positives. Side content also feels a little weaker this time around, as a lot of them are just basic fetch quests or gimmicky missions such as races or timed events that don't add too much flavor to the overall experience.
I'll take it under advisement.
The prequel's combat is just as fast-paced and chaotic as the previous games, the loot system is addictive as ever, and new to the game are laser and cryo weapons. Lasers can really just feel like novelty weapons, but cryo weapons are genuinely useful in combat as you can freeze enemies in place and then shatter them into little pieces. Because of the low gravity you'll experience throughout most of the game's areas, combat and movement will both be a little more floaty and bouncy than you may be used to. The mix-up can be fun to play around with, but it's a bit of a double-edged sword as explosions and melee attacks can send you flying back if you're in midair, and it may seem like your bullets aren't hitting their intended targets if your opponents are flying around as well. On the other hand, enemy variety is solid with the usual mix of humans, machines, and beasts that you'd expect. There's a decent spread of bosses as well, with regard to their combat design and appearance, though some of them can occasionally feel more like bullet sponges than real challenges.
It'd be embarrassing if you died now.
If you're mostly in it for the loot, legendary drop rates are a bit stingier here than the previous game, so loot grinding can take more effort, but if you're playing through the main campaign and aren't chasing post-game content, there's still plenty of gear to pick up thanks to the procedural weapon generation system. Another addition to the game is the Grinder, which you'll unlock in the main story hub about a third of the way through the game. The Grinder allows you to combine weapons that you may not have any use for anymore, with the chance to create higher grade ones. You won't get much guidance on how it works beyond the basics, so there's a lot of experimentation involved if you really want to get yourself some better weapons outside of the standard looting loop. Best case scenario, you're able to earn some really powerful weapons, and at worst, it's a good way to offload unwanted gear if you're not hurting for money, so it's a pretty great addition to the game.
Yeah, sure, what's the worst that could happen?
The DLC offerings here aren't nearly as polished or plentiful compared to what Borderlands 2 offered, but there's still some good content available, and all of the game's DLC is included for free as part of the Handsome Collection. The standout is the Claptastic Voyage, a DLC campaign that takes place within Claptrap's mind. It's surprisingly good, with tighter pacing, more focused storytelling, and some creative environments that feel closer to Borderlands 2's tone than the entirety of the prequel did.
Initiating CL4P TP simulation.
simulation program.
Also included is the ability to play as Handsome Jack's doppelganger, as well as Hammerlock's sister Aurelia, who you may recognize as one of the villains from Borderlands 3.
This'll slow them!
Additionally, there's also the Shock Drop Slaughter Pit, which was originally a pre-order bonus when purchasing the 2014 game. It's just a basic wave-based combat area with 5 waves of enemies to take down though. It's nothing too special, but decent if you're looking for a quick challenge. Borderlands' signature art style is still present in the pre-sequel, and the visuals definitely look better than Borderlands 2, especially as a remastered title. That said, environments do get a bit repetitive, as you'll be spending most of your time either on the moon, in buildings on the moon, or running through outposts on the moon. There's definitely some effort to make each area look distinct, but after a while, it really does all start to blend together as one location because of the assets and color palette.
Is that all?
As far as the audio goes, the voice acting is great, though the intro cutscene had some noticeably muddied dialogue, and the music throughout the game is fine, but nowhere near as memorable or as effective as the other games in the franchise.
Glad you got your priorities right.
One of the bigger issues I have with the overall presentation is something that I talked about in my review of Borderlands 2 as well, and that's how the UI is displayed in multiplayer. When playing in split screen, the menus and text can become very difficult to read, and menu management can become incredibly frustrating to manage because you're sharing screen space. With 2-player split screen, it can be manageable, but when you add in a 3rd or 4th player, it can start to just get really annoying. Performance is mostly fine and not really worth going into too much detail over. There were a few instances of weird NPC movement and some really annoying invisible walls where I should have been able to pass through, but aside from that, nothing worth making too much fuss over. I never had any game-breaking issues, and for that I'm grateful.
This is more like it.
Borderlands the pre-sequel is definitely the black sheep of the series. It's the weakest of the mainline Borderlands games in terms of gameplay flow, story, and overall polish, but even with all of its flaws, it's still Borderlands, and it's still better than a lot of other games out there. The low gravity and oxygen maintenance were both things I could have done without, but the core gameplay loop is satisfying, the humor mostly lands, and more Handsome Jack content is something I'll never turn down.
Oh, go yourself.
If you're going through the Handsome collection already, the pre-sequel is worth playing through at least once to get the whole experience, especially since you'll have access to all of the DLC content and characters, but just make sure you've already played Borderlands 2 to avoid any big spoilers. Out of all the games they have out, this one probably isn't gonna blow your mind, but it might just scratch an itch if you're looking for a little more looter-shooter fun.
Good. Now, big finale time.
As always though, this is just my opinion. Whether you're just jumping into the flashback, or you've already uncovered what's at the end of Athena's story, let me know in the comments what you think of Borderlands the pre-sequel.
Besides, I'm a hero, baby. Self-sacrifice is part of the job.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Sure, hun. And I can tell my ex from a body double. You're not salivating enough. So, Jack sent you, huh? Must have bothered him something awful. No worries, though. It's all in the past. What does he need?
Helios doll attacked, jamming signal. Jeez, you're really pretty.